Hey everybody, it's Chainsaw Reacts. Guys, the newest episode of Arrow Season 4, Episode 21, Monument Point, just finished airing on TV. Now I'm here to review / just talk about the episode. If you haven't seen the newest episode of Arrow, Monument Point, the one I'm reviewing, click away now. This is a spoiler review for this episode. You have been warned. This is a spoiler review for this episode. So if you haven't seen it, click away. You've been warned. Okay, let's get into this episode. So first things first, guys, overall, I did enjoy this episode. I thought it was a good episode. It did move the story along, but I do have some negatives that I do want to talk about up front because it really made me not enjoy this episode as much as I wanted to. So let's get to two of the big negatives. So number one, I usually don't talk about this a lot, but the flashbacks. I felt like the flashbacks, in my personal opinion, were just stopping the story that was happening concurrently in the timeline with Damien Darhk and Hive and Genesis. Just stop it right in its tracks just to go to the flashback, just to see Oliver do some punching and then being thrown around like a rag doll. I just felt like it just made no sense to show this in this episode. Like, I personally feel like in this instant, this is one of the worst examples of the flashbacks. Like, I can deal with the flashbacks for the most part, but I felt like in this particular episode, it just didn't feel needed. The only real thing that happened in this episode in terms of flashbacks was showing, I don't even remember her name, but the girl in the flashbacks, her eyes turn yellow, which you already saw in the episode before when he was there in Hub City and he got attacked by this dark situation. And you see her eyes do that in a little flash thing or whatever. He's like seeing things. So you see that already, and they show it again, and it's just like, okay, and they don't show you any more of it. Oliver just reacts a little bit. That's it. So I felt like the flashbacks were just a major letdown in this week's episode. The second negative I do have to say is Anarchy. Now, Anarchy was brought into the mix early in the season. I thought he was used as good as they could use him, and the part of the fact that he's, of course, tied into Damien Darhk and all that kind of stuff. But I felt like in the beginning of the season, he was pretty good. Now, in this particular episode, I felt like it was just random. It just didn't feel organic. It wasn't like they were talking about him beforehand. He just disappeared for a very long time, and then he just happens to show up in the biodome underground that Thea's in, and he's just there to cause trouble. He's trying to find Damien Darhk. Well, why the hell are you there? He's not there, obviously. It just felt like they had Anarchy in the episode just to go, remember Anarchy? He doesn't like Damien Darhk. He's back and he's in the dome with Thea. And then, of course, him and Thea have a fight. And they weren't really specific if Alex dies from Anarchy. Like, you see Thea check his pulse and then she starts crying, I'm sorry. There was no real implication of that Alex is dead or not. I don't know. I guess we'll find out next week. I don't know. They didn't really say anything about that. But Anarchy, to me, pointless. So anyways, let's get to the positives of this episode, because I actually do have positives for this episode. So the first positive I want to get to is actually Brick in this episode. Brick, of course, you remember from Season 3, he had a mini arc when Oliver was gone, fighting off Ra's al Ghul and healing from magical herbs. Brick was in a short little mini arc, and then he just kind of disappeared. Now he's back into the fold. Damien Darhk's like, well, I broke you out of prison. You're going to work for me. And Brick does. And what I really like about that Brick has returned is that Brick was actually going around and chasing after Felicity's dad, and he got into 2 fights with the Green Arrow, which was pretty awesome. It was a good high point to see Green Arrow versus Brick, because they didn't have a lot of interaction in Season 3, like barely any. So to see them actually go at each other, not once but twice, it was pretty awesome. And the second fight was pretty badass, except Oliver kept doing this flip kick every single time. Like every 5 seconds, just a flip kick, a flip kick, a flip kick. I'm like, come on, Oliver, switch it up. He's used to the flip kicks. Do something different. But anyways, it was pretty awesome to see Brick in this episode, so maybe he'll come back again next week. I don't know, but seeing Brick, that was pretty cool. Next thing I do want to talk about is the surprising couple of scenes with Mama Smoke and Captain Lance. From like, what was the name? Captain Lance. And what I really liked about this is that not only it was showing that there was still a relationship there, because I like this relationship. It's different. It shows that Captain Lance needed something. He needed to have a woman in his life. His ex-wife ain't coming back. And of course he needs someone to talk to besides any members of the team, because clearly he lost his daughter, so he needs to talk to somebody who's not really involved. So him still having this relationship with Mama Smoke is pretty good. And what I like is that she was like, what is this? And she hands him this huge long piece of paper where it basically says, if you sign this, Captain Lance, you will return back to the police force. And on the paper it says that you had no knowledge of Black Canary being your daughter and all that kind of stuff. So I like the fact they threw that in the mix, because essentially it made him think, oh, maybe this is not a good idea. And the fact that he goes and gets it changed where he is going to sign to return to the police force, but he acknowledges that his daughter, as the Black Canary, did a lot of good for the city. So I like the fact that Mama Smoke did more than just be a pretty face on TV for an episode. Like, she actually had a purpose to being in these scenes. And I just like the connection between those two characters. I really feel like it's a strong relationship, and I'm hoping that it stays that way. I'm hoping nothing tampers or messes with it, because it's a nice switch up from what's happening in the episode. Next I do want to talk about is actually Oliver in this episode. He has a lot of great dialogue in this episode. He talks a lot to Diggle in this episode about he's made mistakes, he's lied, and showing he's growing as a character. And on top of that, he has a pretty badass scene when they're trying to steal this piece of tech that Felicity's dad needs to stop the nukes. And Oliver has this great fight scene in a stairwell with like 3 guys. Maybe there's 4. I think there was only 3. But he was badass. He was wearing he wasn't wearing the Green Arrow outfit. He had like a something over his face, like a scarf or whatever, or something over his face. He's kicking major ass by himself. People pointed out, like, see, Green Arrow can kick ass by himself, which I totally agree. Of course he can. It was a pretty awesome fight scene. I definitely want to rewatch that again, so I'm going to go to Hulu tomorrow when I get home and rewatch that scene again, because it's a pretty badass scene. Kicking ass in that stairwell. So that was pretty cool. And the last thing I do want to talk about, now obviously I could talk about Felicity and her dad, but I really don't want to talk about it, to be honest with you. But what I do want to talk about is what happened at the end of the episode, which I usually cover first, is what happens at the end of the episode. But I was quite shocked. So Genesis, as we know, is about launching a nuclear attack on the entire planet. They were lucky to succeed in stopping most of the nukes. However, one got away, and Felicity's trying to disable it. It's not working, and essentially it was supposed to go to Monument Point, Monument Point, and it doesn't hit there because Felicity changed the GPS, but it still hits a city, and from what Lila tells Felicity, tens of thousands of lives were lost. And then Lila says, but if it would hit Monument Point, it would have been millions, Felicity. I don't care. Tens of thousands of lives just got lost on the show. Not due to Felicity, but she still made it. She still allowed it to hit. Maybe it was out of her control. You could tell it deeply affected her. It wasn't like she was planning on killing people, but, I mean, come on. I don't know. I feel like that this was, I'm not really sure if it was a smart idea to put Felicity in that type of situation where she has to say, if it hits Monument Point, millions die, but if I redirect it, it's still going to hit somewhere. So she had no choice. I don't know. Maybe they felt like they needed to be a major catastrophe before the season finale in order for this to really build up to something major. I don't know. I'm trying to wrap my head around it. So, anyways, I felt like this was overall a good episode. Had its problems, had its issues that I personally didn't like. Felicity's dad, I just could care less at this point. I mean, he's a freaking broken record. I'm trying to be a better dad. I'm not a monster. Shut up. Just shut up. Anyways, that's my review, guys. Monument Point, overall a good episode. Some negative criticism that, I'm not a fan of, but it is what it is. This episode has moved along, and I'm hoping that next week's episode, which the promo looked pretty good for next week's episode, I'm hoping that's a better episode, because this week's, it's good, could have been a lot better. So there you have it, guys. That's my review. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Let me know in the comment section below what you thought about this episode. Peace out.